Every time I kind of get back to what's most important in my life, really it's freedom to go up, down, right, or left at a moment's notice. And I think I've been able to accomplish that because I've really lived a debt-free life.
So you just heard from Arlene, and we're gonna learn all about Arlene now, and we're gonna talk about that freedom that she's talking about. And just so you know, Arlene is from Oregon, just outside of Portland, so the freedom might be a little bit different than some people's definition of freedom today. But let's get into a little bit about Arlene's background and show you guys the beautiful view that she has. Let's just show you that view right away.
I'm Arlene Burns. I'm from Mosier, Oregon, which is just outside of Portland, and I spend about 5 months a year here in La Ventana, El Sargento, and this is because I'm a wind sport junkie.
La Ventana and Hood River, Oregon are like almost sister cities. It's amazing how many people go back and forth between the two of them. But before we get into the life here in La Ventana, and we'll show her house and talk about things, you know, how much she pays and how she's affording things to go between two countries. Let's get a little bit of background of how Arlene has arrived at this point in her life where she is splitting her time almost evenly between two amazing places in this world.
Okay, we'll try a quick version of this. Studied geology in university. Right after school, I bought a one-way ticket to New Zealand. I had $600 in my pocket, and I wanted to go for as long as it took. And I realized how curious I was, how little I knew, and how much there was to learn. And that led to being overseas for about 13 years, based in Kathmandu, Nepal for 10 of those 13 years, but guiding people on expeditions, mostly whitewater, but also climbing in Nepal, in South America, in Siberia. I was kind of a migrant worker as a guide. And besides this, I was taking pictures and writing. So I had sort of photojournalist writing, and then I got into filmmaking. So all of those things led to later on me running this film festival in Telluride, Colorado, mountain film. And interestingly, it was my skills as a river guide that helped me there. And then from mountain film, when I got back to Oregon, I became mayor. And it was the skills of being the director of a film festival that helped me manage my city and my community. So I would say my weaknesses, money-wise, are technological equipment like computers, phones, even though I don't have the latest, and also sporting equipment. And then other than that, no jewels, no fancy spas. You know, I have a pretty simple life, and it's just, I think one of my gauges of success in life is that you wake up when you wake up without an alarm. That's always a good test. Can you wake up when your body goes bink in the morning? And so anyway, this balance of life is just, I think, not based on being frugal. It's based on being generous, but it's also not having this overwhelming debt of things that I think, you know, everything we own, it owns you back as much as you own it. So I think I've simplified my life to this point where I don't have these extravagances. And of course, you know, I'm saying that right now, I've got some big water issues and black mold in my house, and it's probably going to cost, I don't know, maybe 15 grand to fix it. So there's some big hits here and there, but those are minor things compared to health and compared to, you know, living in an environment, in an ecosystem where you feel vital and nourished by your surroundings and community.
Actually, Arlene mentioned that she was mayor of the town of Mosier, which is just outside of Hood River, just outside of Portland. And that's actually when I met Arlene. She was the mayor of Mosier, and I met Arlene on a boat in La Paz. So I want her to talk a bit about that and how freedom ties into that and some of the benefits of the pandemic, I guess.
Well, I started coming down here while I was mayor before the pandemic, and it was a little difficult to try to run the city from afar. But once the pandemic hit, it was like the genie got out of the bottle, where we could work remotely and also legitimately run the town from far away. And in fact, a few years ago, 3 of our 7 city council members were in Southern Baja for the winter. And we were conducting our Zoom meetings and finding funding for this and that. And it really made no difference, except my spirit was happier because I was in a place that had sunshine and wind and water and was out of sort of the gloom of Oregon winter. Our current mayor, who replaced me, actually rented this house that I'm in. And that's why I'm in this house now, because he didn't need it. He goes back. He loves skiing too. So he only likes to be here a few months a year. I think a compass for me has been, if I want to do something, I'll do it for nothing. And if I don't want to do it, I won't do it for any amount of money. So all the time, I'm not using money as something to prompt me, or fear of not having money as a reason to do something I really don't want to do. So sometimes it's a little vulnerability with that, but I don't worry about my children starving or not getting an education because I don't have children. So I think I've had a lot more freedom to sort of be a little bit more on an edge than maybe some people would if they had a whole bunch of people dependent upon them. So yeah, the wind's coming up. So I don't know how much longer we're going to be here before it's time to go out. But yeah, for me, this idea of being able to make our decisions at this moment and not plan things way in advance. And the pandemic for all of us, I don't know how many lost plane tickets I had because I couldn't go because of one thing or another. So I think we're much better off if we can live in the present and engage in things that are vital to us and important to us. So now I pretty much help wherever I can. I do what I can, when I can, if I can, how I can, to worthy people and worthy causes. So I'm involved with Sea-Watch, which is trying to protect the island of Espiritu Santo and create a no-take zone around the island, something really crucial if we want the fish to come back.
So Arlene mentioned that the wind is coming up, and that's actually very interesting. I didn't know the wind patterns in La Ventana, but huge windsurfing, wind sailing, wind stuff destination. And when we set up this interview, she's like, it's got to be early in the morning because I need to get out on the water to enjoy life. So let's just hear a little bit about La Ventana and why she's here.
Well, when I first moved to Mosier, everyone said, you must be a windsurfer. And I wasn't. I was a whitewater kayaker. But eventually the wind, it's like an apple pie baking in the oven. You start smelling it. It starts smelling you. And so I learned to windsurf actually down in Baja in 1997. And where we live in Oregon, it's one of the meccas for wind sports in the United States. And this is seasonal, of course. So the great thing about this area of Mexico is you can drive here. And I drive by myself. I have a reliable vehicle. This year I took 10 days to get from Oregon to here. The Mexican border is about halfway, and the Baja Peninsula is stunningly beautiful. And I always wish I had more time even than that between here and there. But once I'm here, then I settle into a routine. The beautiful thing about La Ventana is the wind comes up predictably around noon. So you can depend on the mornings being times when you can have meetings, getting things done, meditate, swim, whatever. And then we all sort of are smelling that pie baking in the oven. And now I was late to switch, but now I'm a kite surfer. And I use a strapless surfboard and big kites with 90-foot lines, and usually do downwinders of sometimes about an hour and a half each day, but going maybe 18 miles in that hour and a half. And that's enough. I'm an old lady, but I am learning to wing foil. And so that is back to being a beginner again. And I think the main reason I'm wanting to learn to wing foil, because I love the kiting, is I have this vision of being on a sailboat crossing the Pacific Ocean, not in the doldrums, but where there's wind. And on a wing foil, you could be doing circles around a sailboat under sail in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And with kiting, you really can't, it's a lot harder to get in and out, and with all those long strings, and you don't want them caught in propellers, etc. So I think the wing foiling, you need less wind in general, so it opens up more places to go. You still have an inflatable little wing, which is smaller than a kite. That's even smaller. but you have this sort of long mast that goes down and an underwater airplane. Basically, everyone says it's got a fuselage and wing and a stabilizer. And once you get that the board off the water, then it takes very little wind to fly this foil. So that's what I'm learning, but it's pretty brutal now. I'm in the very beginning stages.
So Arlene just mentioned, I think she said she was an old lady, but she definitely doesn't seem like it if she's out there on this water. So let's hear about her age and kind of like, I want to start to get into financial stuff too. So it's essentially, it's kind of like retirement, early retirement. What's going on?
You ask all kinds of questions. I see. Well, I'm 63 years old. I'll be 64. I've been an athlete all my life. I've had a lot of injuries as well. So I feel like my body's in pretty good shape. My weaknesses are my neck. I've broken my neck 5 times. And my ankle, I've broken my ankle probably 5 times. So, but I really believe as we get older, the best things we can do for ourselves and for our health is to maintain balance. And that's what I love about these wind sports and a stand-up paddleboard on the water without the wind. You know, to have balance, dynamic balance enables us to stay light on our feet and agile. So I will do this as long as I can. And what I love about being out there in the ocean is really you're alone. It's not a team sport. And you can access this bliss state that's like meditation. I often sing. I never know what I'm going to sing. It's like the waves sort of prompt whatever song comes in my head. But it's just so extraordinary to be able to access this space. One time last year, an orca swam underneath me while I was kiting, and I saw the big white patch. And it's just like, to be able to be in this lovely, warm, clean sea is just, I'm just so thankful for having enough ability. And I made it through the learning curve kiting. I did have a really bad accident early on where I went about 60 yards and landed on my neck in the sand and was in traction for about 6 weeks. And then I got back on the horse and, it was funny. It was at a point that I thought I was pretty all right. Like I was off the beginner stage, but I was back to old equipment that didn't have the same sort of safety mechanisms that the new stuff has. So I feel I'm over the hump with kiting. I don't feel it's a dangerous sport for me. The only thing dangerous about it is if you get tangled with another person, and that's easy to avoid if you avoid getting near people. So I'm sort of proactively find my own space out there. So that's sort of one of my pleasures and loves in life now is just really the access to that quiet space of being able to be, a mile out at sea and turning down waves, and it's pretty sweet.
So we started out this video talking about freedom, and freedom doesn't come free. So I do want to dig into some numbers here. Arlene is renting here, and I want to know kind of like what's it cost to rent in La Ventana, and what's her kind of retirement plan, and like how is she making it happen so that you can understand what's possible for you?
Well, the nice thing about La Ventana is no matter what your budget is, there's something for you. I just picked up a guy hitchhiking back north yesterday, and he spends $12 a night camped in this beautiful spot in South Beach. The campgrounds, they can be from $30 a night, a little bit less. Some of the houses on the beach you can pay $4,000 or $6,000 a month.
You got
These are Mexican steps, by the way.
Oh, they're all different sizes?
Oh, yes. That go down to the water from here, and this beautiful beach. This place that I found, it's about $1,100 a month, which was a big jump from the trailer I was staying in, which was $200 a month. I wanted to be able to have house guests come to visit, and it has a spare room. So for me, and I'm used to living alone, so I think it was kind of worth kind of gulping and spending some money. And the other thing is, for years, I've been thinking about, and probably should have bought land a long time ago when it was really cheap. But I've been thinking about that. And every year it's like balancing, okay, the cost of owning something down here, of buying a house, of building a house, which is in the end going to be probably a couple $100,000 at a minimum. You can rent for $1,000 a month for a whole lot of months before you get anywhere near that, even for 10 years or 15 years. And maybe in 15 years, I'm not going to be able to do these wind sports. So it doesn't, if I found the right piece of property, I love the idea of a project as much as anything. But, again, whatever you own owns you back. And if you have a place here and you're spending your time worried about somebody stealing things or it's getting broken into, there's a tremendous freedom about being able to leave at the end of a season and say goodbye to the place and not worry about being vandalized over the off season. So that's where I am right now. Just keep it light, keep it simple, keep my expenses down. I don't eat out that much, but when I do eat out, I'm happy to pay for the bill for the group of people. I don't have, I guess my biggest extravagant habit is eating good quality food, meaning organic food. I think we pay for it in the front or we pay for it later with our health. So that's a priority for me. But yeah, I feel I can live down here pretty efficiently. In fact, I know I spend a lot less money when I'm here than at home because I don't have access to Amazon delivery down here. It's amazing what I live without and how much I start ordering stuff when I get back. But I've kind of found a nice balance that's worked for me. I bought my house in the Gorge in 1994, and this one Hollywood job paid for the house in the Gorge, and that was really, really lucky because I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I worked in film, and whenever I was able to save a little bit, I'd put some into investments, but mostly I invested in my own little ecosystem. So I remodeled my house and brought it up. I remodeled a property across the street, which I was able to buy, and that's what I rent. And I rent it long term. I could rent it short term for a lot more money, but I was chained to it when I did that. I was cleaning toilets and showers every weekend. And, it's really hard to find reliable people when that is what you're focusing on for your income. So I think I made the choice of supporting the community a little more by offering long-term housing. And I have wonderful renters that pay a really reasonable amount for them. And as long as it can pay my right to live there, then I sort of stay on this line. And so I don't know. I've been wondering if I can do it. And one never knows. One, you don't know how long you're going to live. If we did, it would be really easy to calculate backwards. But we don't know that. But I've had some threats of terminal illness the last few years that turned out to be not terminal illness. But on both of them, it's reminded me the importance of living the lives we want to live right now, because we really don't know. I guess my insurance policy is I have these properties in Oregon that I could sell, one or both if I needed to, and that would give me an influx of cash. So I can move things around if I need to, but I still think that my Oregon property is a really good investment, and it's gone up in value tremendously since I bought it. And it's enabled me, as I've always dreamed for, a pied à terre, a place on the earth, but not a place that grounds me permanently, a place to come and go from. I think I have a pretty light imprint. As I said, I'm not an extravagant spender or consumer. I live a pretty simple life. My joys and my pleasures are simple ones. They're to be able to go snorkeling and put on a mask and snorkel and fins and spend an hour out in the ocean hanging out with fish. That's to me a success. It's healthy, it's vital, it's connected with nature. So those are really my priorities, to be able to have a simple life that is doing what I want with my life force and giving where I can, how I can.
See, I really, renting versus owning, that's a big topic that comes up. Kat and I chose to buy. And a lot of people say rent until you love the place and then buy. But Arlene makes a really good case for renting because, for the last week or so, we've had people at our house, and I'm constantly coordinating the contractors who are repairing the concrete or replacing the pool, or, there's so many things to do when you own a place. It really does cut down on your freedom. Like I love doing that stuff, but I'm not free to just hop and, hop in the ocean because it's like, oh, well, I got to make sure that, the painter is painting the right color. So it is interesting to have that balance there between, owning something, which is a good investment. It's turned out to be a good investment, but also it's an investment in time that I hadn't really anticipated.
Well, I do own my property in Oregon, and I think I'm so thankful for owning, even though I have big issues in my house right now. People think owning property is just, okay, you've succeeded. I still believe it's the best place to put our money as far as it's something solid, unless it all burns down, which can happen in the gorge at this point every summer. But it's like if you own in other places on the planet, then you're sort of obliged to go to that place. And that's the other thing with me. Like next winter, I was like, well, I could go to New Zealand for the winter. I used to live down there and go back. Or I could go and spend more time in Europe. And once you own, and, I'm owning in Oregon, but if you own other places, then you really are putting yourself in the rut of your own creation. So you just have to make sure you're making that choice and it's a place you really, really want to be. And I might have missed the boat not buying here sooner, and I might still buy something down here. I don't know. It would be I would have to gulp a little bit to buy something. But if I found the right partners or the right property, just the idea of creating a little mecca here. But even, this place, it's awesome. But guess what? On Saturday nights, there might be techno music going on that you can't even put pillows on your ears and keep that beat from vibrating through into your brain. The Arroyo on the weekends sometimes is full of boom boxes that go till 4 a.m. So even, what if I own this place and here's your little paradise, but you can't get away from the noise and it drives you crazy? So, there's not a right and a wrong answer in that. I think, again, it's like if a property pulls you and calls you, and as one of my friends said when I first bought my house in Mosier, it doesn't need to work for the rest of your life. It needs to work for right now. And, is it sound? Is it something that you could sell? I think one thing that's happened in La Ventana, it's gotten a little bit overbuilt with people that thought, okay, we'll rent our house out to make a bunch of money. And there are a lot of places for rents, more than there are people renting. So I think that's the other thing about a place that's getting overbuilt with foreigners, as an investment property. That and then the other big issue right here is the water situation, because almost every single house here that's not in this quote city of La Ventana, El Sargento, has water brought in a big truck and put in a pila. So every drop out of the shower, out of the sink, out of everywhere needs to be refilled by a truck. And that truck is requiring diesel or gas to get from here to there. And if you think about a whole area that's dependent on pilas getting filled, that's insane. And, nobody's really talking about it, but it's not a sustainable situation. And, what is the quality of the water even that's going into people's pilas? There's supposedly a lot of arsenic around here. So I don't know if this will come to a crisis if where they're getting the water from, which is Los Planes, starts diminishing and there isn't enough for agriculture. But it could shut down a lot of viability and livability here if all of a sudden people can't get a truck to deliver something so basic as water.
So Arlene said pila, which is what I would call a tinaco. So it's interesting in different parts of Mexico. I'm going to do a video probably about the different words like chela and cerveza. Anyway, let's take a look at the house. And actually where I was going with that is I've got another video about specifically water, how water works in Mexico in terms of like if you get city water and things like that. So check that out. It's in one of the corners. But let's take a look at the house here that she's renting so you can get an idea of in La Ventana what you can get for about $1,100 a month. And that is a short-term rental, probably like 5 months, 4 months. The price would probably go down if you're here the entire year.
The great thing that I love about this place is the outdoor space, which is where 99% of everybody's time is spent. It's got a great porch. It's got a view of the sea. It's covered, so you're out of the sun. And because of the warm temperature, Even at night, if it's a little cool, you just have a jacket on. So this is where anybody who lives here spends their time, right here on this porch. This is the kitchen. It has kind of everything you need. I took the table out of the kitchen because there wasn't much room. But here's an interesting thing. This is the water coming out of the kitchen sink. That's it. I mean, it's really hard to wash dishes with that. It's like a little dribble. You can barely brush your teeth with that. So this is El Mexicane. This little area I love. It's got a palapa roof. But here's something, if you're tall, that you really have to watch. This beam, I'm all right, but you would not be all right. And it's covered enough that people can hit their heads and knock themselves out if they're not careful. Anyway, this is a really good house for the shorter people or people very aware. Another thing with a Mexican house that you've got to always keep in mind, or in this house, is unlike in the States where everything is to code and things are smooth, there are little curbs in places that you could stump your toe, like coming up this ramp that you can like really take off your toenail on that one, the same going from one room to the other. So this is good for us just being extra aware of our circumstances. And once you know about the beam and know, like whenever I have guests, I explain all the obstacles to make sure that they don't end up in the hospital. So it only took me a year to figure this out, but I now do my dishes out here in the utility sink, which I think is mainly made for cleaning fish. But this has great water pressure, so I don't even use the kitchen for doing dishes at all. This is where I do my dishes now. So this is the washing machine, which when I need it, I plug it in. But then there's a plug dragging, so I only plug it in when I need it. And then with this one, you have to hand fill with a hose because there's not really water connected to it. And then it can drain into the sink, and then you fill it again to rinse and listen to it, and then fill it again to rinse again. So it's a little bit more of a manual process, but it's nice still to have a laundry right here in the house.
That is great. We have this kind of saying, it's like, it's Mexico when things are just done differently than they are in the US. Like we have a washing machine that works pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't empty, but it's kind of like this, it's way of thinking to say like, you know what, that is a perfect way to wash clothes. You're not washing them by hand, but maybe you have to do things a little bit differently than you do back in the US. It's Mexico.
This is my guest bedroom. This is actually considered the master bedroom of the house because it is attached to the bathroom. There's only one bathroom in the house, but I really like the bedroom in the front much better. So that's where I stay. So my guests who want to be closer to the bathroom are in this fine room. So this is my bedroom. I actually rearranged the beds when I got here so there would be focusing on the view. And I brought this nice mosquito net, which folds kind of by this frame into a little circle if you can ever get it back, because there are mosquitoes here. And this is a much more effective way to keep them out. That was one from last night that got inside. So, and I have a nice view of sunrise. I can actually see sunrise from bed, which is pretty sweet. So this is my van, which when I'm driving down in, I have I have a platform and a bed in, but when I'm down here, I use it really to carry my water sport equipment. These are my surfboards for kiting. And this is a board that I'm borrowing at the moment with this foil on it. And it's a huge one, but when you're learning to wing foil, you kind of have to start on a big board. But in this van, I can carry like 5 kites, wings, pumps, everything I need. So it's pretty handy like that. And it has 3 legal seats. So I've got to go pick up some folks at the airport next week. I can take all my gear out, pop the seats back up, and then it's like a luxury limousine.
So it's about almost 11 o'clock and the wind is picking up. We have our first, what is that? Is that a wind? That's a windsurfer, right?
No, that's a kite. That's a kite.
That's a kite.
Yeah. Anything that's way up in the sky has the long lines, about 90 feet long, and you'll follow the thing down and you'll see somebody in the water. And that's probably a beginner that's learning. Maybe that's an instructor on the shore.
Well, I can see Arlene starting to get anxious here as that wind is coming up and she wants to get out on the water. But let's get the final thing from her is I want a little bit of advice for you.
I guess if you're looking for advice, I would go back to what my grandfather told me on his deathbed. He was a naval captain, and he said, keep your stern free to swing. And it took me forever to figure out what in the hell he meant by that. But basically, on the big ships, you steer them from the stern. So it means keep your hand on the tiller of your own life. Like our own health, our happiness, everything is really in our hands. And we can make decisions every moment, every day that lead towards being in a more satisfied place and not blame circumstance or other people for our unhappiness. You know, happiness is a choice. And I would say, in general, one thing all around the world that I've noticed is expats seem to be innately happier because they're choosing life. Like you don't end up here by accident. Most likely, you know, you've made an effort, you've gotten out of your bubble. And so I think we're sort of already predispositioned to be making dynamic choices, hopefully improving our circumstance, improving our community, and improving our own like reason to be.
Well, that is great advice. So the question I have is, what are you waiting for? Time to get happy, time to move to Mexico. I've got some other videos here of folks who have also done it, other folks who've moved south. So check those out next, and hasta luego.